And the idea that, well, if we can't repeat miracles, then they must not exist. We demand repeatability, experimentation, repeatability. And if we can't replicate it, then it doesn't exist. Well, by definition, you expect a miracle to be repeatable? And this is the flaw of natural science. Natural science is, at its core, empirical. And theology is not. In the essence of spiritually digesting divine revelation, spiritually digesting special revelation, okay? And I've got to be careful here because natural revelation is empirical. But special revelation? All right, when a scientist is trying to get his test tubes out and his microscopes and trying to find the human soul, is he going to find it? Well, might as well try to build a ladder to heaven, right? I mean, you're spanning dimensions here. You're crossing from the physical to the spiritual. Aspects there. All right, let's move on now. It is the top of the hour. Move on to chapter 4, Revelation. And I'm thankful for this chapter for personal reasons and others. Only because in my own experience and ministry, I've often gone here and been very, reaped some fruit and been thankful in this, not only in discussing God's existence, but also God's nature as a communicator. And one of the things that we observe as we observe natural revelation and creation, we observe dogs bark and cats meow and horses whinny and all that. Animals make animal noises, and insects communicate with each other as they coordinate their activities, and even plants in ways we don't understand, and their pollination and different aspects. There is communication. There is communication almost everywhere you look in nature, and so. In observing a design and assuming that there must be a designer because you see design, one of the things that you see in that design is communication. And so I think one of the things that's safe to then assume or to conclude is that, yes, there's a designer, and that designer is a communicator. Okay? That designer is not some God hiding somewhere, the watchmaker that created the universe, wound it up, and now is stepping back, not dealing with anything. That he's a communicator. That he wants to be known, that he is revealing himself in such a way, and that he does communicate. And what we learn in the realm of humanity is that, as different as humanity is, and the races and the cultures and the languages and everything, as different as we are, this is what we do have in common, is that our cultures are communicative. Might be different languages, but we relate to each other. Okay? And that's interesting. And we relate in relational ways that animals can't. Okay? The animal intelligence is not the same as the human morality, the human sensibility, the human will, when it comes down to it. That'll get me in trouble. All right, when I talk about the animal realm, I hurt some people's feelings about Fifi and Fluffy and all the others. And I know your cat speaks to you. All right. And yes, they can communicate. They can make it known when they are hungry or unhappy or scared or content and whatever. And they have animalistic means to communicate such things. But they will not speak to you related to the plan of God for salvation. They will not fellowship with you over the glories of God's eternal plan and the faithfulness of Jesus Christ to execute that. The capacity for that communication is limited to us, made in the image of God, not the animal. All right. So, general revelation, special revelation. Was this a shock to anyone? You had this before? All right. Then this may be easy. General revelation in nature. Romans 1 says all mankind is without excuse. And man is without excuse in the external universe that around him, but also internally to himself. He is still in the image of God, even as a fallen creature. Some folks miss that. But the image of God is maintained even after the fall. Capital punishment is given in Genesis 9 because of the image of God that's attacked in murder. And that's after the fall. The book of James also talks about us in the image of God. That's after the fall. So the fall of Adam and Eve into sin did not change the reality that our humanity is the image of God. We image God as human beings. So general revelation. Special revelation, of course, is things that we would not know had God not revealed them. Things which I have not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered in the heart of man. No scientist will ever find this in a test tube, or in a microscope, or in a telescope. No philosopher will ever invent this in his own imaginations. What God has revealed is what God alone can reveal. Prerequisites for revelation. And this is common. I mean, this is not just limited to God's revelation, our own revelation, our own communication. If you have a thought and you want a fellow human being to have that same thought, you have to transmit it. Verbal or written form is our normal means. I guess there's non-verbal communication. All right. So you have a being capable of giving a revelation, a being capable of receiving a revelation, and a medium through which a revelation can be given. And, fundamentally, did, Moses, when he was grumbling about not being a good speaker, being afraid to go to Egypt and send my brother instead, God said, did I not make the mouth? Don't you trust me to put words in your mouth that, I'm the creator of your mouth. I know what kind of speaker you are. Well, ultimately, this is is he not the creator of the brain? Is he not the creator of humanity? Has he not created us in such a fashion so as to respond to that which he reveals? As he discloses himself to us? To me, it's a no-brainer. All right? So yes, if there is a theistic God, then he's obviously capable of revealing himself. He's capable of accomplishing miracles. He exists. And this should be pretty simple. Now, I don't know that I've encountered this before. I enjoyed this chapter very much because he viewed, or he presented natural revelation as more than just the universe itself. In terms of Romans 1, his power is made known through what has been made so that we're without excuse, but he gets very specific here. Yes, physical nature is part of that. And these are great verses through here. We don't need to review that. But then he goes on to say, human nature is a revelation of God. Because we're in his image. We are his image. And so beyond the physical universe around us, you should look at us too. What makes us different from the animals? What makes us different from the plants? What makes us different? What is it in us? Our conscience, our morals? Different aspects here. And God's not unique in that. But here's some other things that I think are unique. Human history, human arts, music. I don't know that I've read this in another systematic theology besides this. God's revelation in human history. You ever think about that? As history unfolds. Why did the Greeks win Marathon? Why did Charles Martel win the Battle of Tours? Why did the United States win the Battle of Midway? How would this world be different if the Persians had defeated the Greeks or the Nazis had defeated the British? Or these different what-if scenarios of alternative history. It's kind of a fan fiction kind of thing, right? And different authors are doing a lot of this stuff. What if Pickett's charge had been successful and the Confederacy had defeated the Union? All right. Different aspects. Well, every event is under God's control. History is unfolding according to Daniel 2, Daniel 7, the pattern of prophetic revelation. We are headed for tribulation and millennium. All right. Does anyone doubt that's coming up? And it's interesting to see. I believe it's, I'd have to hunt for this. Years ago, I had it in my file somewhere. It's a quote by Napoleon. I think it's by Napoleon. In any event, he said, if anybody questions the existence of God, the reality of the existence of the Jewish people is all the evidence you need. Here's a race that countless times Gentiles have tried to exterminate. And they've been booted from their homeland. At the time he was alive, of course, the nation of Israel not yet been reformed. And yet they are a thriving group. And he was struck by, he may not have been Napoleon, I'm rusty on this. But the existence of the Jewish people was a feature of history that just amazed somebody that I'm pretty sure was Napoleon. All right. Be that as it may. God's in charge. God's in charge. And since all judgment's been given to the Son, we can say specifically Jesus Christ is in charge. That since his session at the right hand of God the Father, Jesus Christ controls history. We can appreciate that. God's revelation in human arts, God's revelation in music. And those struck me, and I enjoyed those paragraphs. Because again, I don't think I've seen them in other systematic theologies. I've read a lot. All right. And the fact that I liked, and his quote here of Sayers got me to find this book, which is out of print, but calling humanity sub-creators, like a subcontractor. I've said different things. I've phrased it different ways, and not too long ago, actually, with respect to, I think, our Romans series. God is the creator, the only creator, but we are creative. Why are we creative? Because we're in the image of God, the Creator. And the way that we are creative in art, in music, or in writing, or in literature, or in architecture, or in construction, or in whatever, all right? This building we're in right now started as an idea. Scott Grubb just got some rough parameters of kind of some basics, how do you want it to kind of shaped, and then took it from an idea to a reality in a creative way. And musicians and artists, and when you draw and when you paint, and when you're just taking ideas and you're bringing them into existence in a tangible form. Okay? We can't create ex nihilo. We can't, cause something to come into existence out of nothing. But we do take ideas and thought and put them into tangible form on paper and clay and marble or whatever. Sound in music. And so I find this interesting. And I really was blessed by reading those paragraphs and so forth. Here's a neat table. I thought about forcing you to replicate that in your quiz, and then I just ran out of space on my paper. So, but the difference between general revelation and special revelation, God as creator versus God as redeemer. I enjoyed this. The norm for society, the norm for the church. Now, the world at large can reject our theology, but they can't reject the laws of gravity. They're subject to the same natural revelation that they deny or hate. They're still subject to it. And they're still getting old. And they're still decaying. And all of that. All right, let's get a microphone here.
A couple of things that he didn't really mention that I kind of wondered about. Mm-hmm. Under general revelation, I've heard of a study, in fact, been through it, read several books on the gospel and the stars. Uh-huh. And it talks about the commonality of astrological star charts around the world in different cultures in South America and Egypt, that sort of thing.
Right.
And through a study of Scripture, there is a teaching that came from a common origin, and that was God's message and plan for the whole ages in the heavens, mm-hmm. and that the stars have a message. Astrology is like a perversion of that original message.
I would agree with that.
And anyhow, he had no mention of that, and I think that brings a lot more to bear on the general revelation end of it, and especially when it talks about revelation in nature and the details of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if you wanted to comment on that or had read or known.
Oh yeah, definitely. The Witness in the Stars,
Yeah.
Bollinger, and there's several authors that have written on that. And I agree with that. The statement of the creation of the sun, moon, and stars in Genesis very clearly is for signs. And he did address that in the vocabulary for the oath, the Hebrew word oath for signs.